Hey, good morning, guys. Hey, as we're in the Easter season, and as we get further into it, at the end of it, it closes out with the Feast of Pentecost, which is the descent of the Holy Spirit on the apostles. Knowing that, and also knowing this week, on Thursday, our 8th grade will be celebrating the sacrament of confirmation. I found this video on the Holy Spirit that I thought was pretty good. So this morning, I thought I'd have you guys watch this video instead of one that I made. So I hope you enjoy it.
If you've ever heard the phrase, the Holy Spirit, and you want to know what it means, where do you start?
Well, you have to start on page 1 of the Bible, where the uncreated world is depicted as this dark, chaotic place. But then above the chaos, God's Spirit is there, hovering, ready to bring about life and order and beauty.
Okay, but what is God's Spirit?
Yeah, so the Spirit is the way the biblical authors talk about God's personal presence. The Hebrew word is ruach.
Ruach.
Yeah, you got to clear your throat at the end.
So what is it?
Well, ruach can refer to a number of different things, but what they all have in common is energy.
Energy, how so?
So there's an invisible energy that makes the clouds move or the tree branches sway.
Right, wind.
So in Hebrew, that's ruach.
Okay.
Now take a big breath. So you feel that inside you.
Yeah, the air?
Well, specifically the energy, right? The vitality in your body that you get from breathing deeply, that too is ruach. And this is the same word used in the Bible to describe God's personal presence. Just like wind and breath are invisible, God's Spirit is invisible. Wind is powerful, and so God's Spirit is powerful. And just as breath keeps us alive, so God's Spirit sustains all of life.
Yeah, ruach.
Now, as we continue on in the story of the Bible, we see God's Ruach giving special empowerment to people for specific tasks. The first person in the Bible this happens to is Joseph.
God's Spirit enables him to understand and interpret dreams.
And then it happens to this guy named Bezalel, and he's an artist.
God's Spirit empowers him with wisdom and skills. He's given creative genius to make beautiful things in the tabernacle.
And we also see God's Ruach empower a group of people called the prophets.
They're able to see what's happening in history from God's point of view.
That's exactly right. And here's the problem as the prophets saw it. While God's Ruach had created a really good world, humans have given in to evil. They've unleashed chaos into it through their injustice.
A new type of disorder.
Yes, and the prophet said the Spirit would come, just like in Genesis 1, but now to transform the human heart, to empower people to truly love God and others.
How will this new act of God's Spirit happen?
Well, centuries pass, and we are introduced to Jesus. And at the beginning of his mission, there's this beautiful scene where Jesus is being baptized in the waters of the Jordan River.
Yeah, the sky opens up and God's Spirit comes and rests on him like a bird.
This story is saying that God's Spirit is empowering Jesus to begin the new creation. And we see this happening when he heals people or forgives their sins. He's creating life where there once was death.
Now, Israel's religious leaders oppose Jesus, and they eventually have him killed.
But even here, God's Spirit is at work. The earliest disciples of Jesus, who saw him alive from the dead, said it was God's energizing Spirit that raised Jesus.
This is the beginning of new creation.
Yes, and it's still going. When Jesus appeared to his closest followers, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit."
And soon after that, the Spirit powerfully comes on all of his disciples.
So that they can become a part of this new creation and share the good news and learn how to live by the energy and influence of God's Spirit.
And so today, The Spirit is still hovering in dark places.
Yes, pointing people to Jesus, transforming and empowering them so they can love God and others. And the Christian hope is that the Spirit is going to finish the job. The story of the Bible ends with a vision of a new humanity, living in a new world that's permeated with God's love and life-giving Spirit.
Yeah, I like that video on the Holy Spirit because I think it explains well a few things. The word itself, ruach, and how he talked about how it's like saying clearing your throat. It's kind of neat just to think about that every time we clear our throat. Maybe we'll think of the Holy Spirit then. But the Holy Spirit that goes back to the very beginning and how it created this earth of ours, and how that Holy Spirit that, empowered the prophets and gave Jesus his healing power, and it raised him from the dead. And it was that Holy Spirit that came at Pentecost to the apostles who were so afraid, and with the Holy Spirit it empowered them, gave them the energy to go out and start telling everybody about Jesus who was raised from the dead and not be afraid of anything, and how they changed the world and how it's reached us even today. But that Holy Spirit, that power, that energy, we all have within us from our baptism. But you 8th graders, this Thursday when you receive that sacrament, how you're given the fullness. It's your Pentecost, the fullness of the Spirit, so that as you go forward in life now, to remember that. Remember that when you have to make a decision, don't just do it on your own. Remember, call on the Holy Spirit. God, help me have the gift of right judgment, so that God helps you be inspired to make the right decision, have the wisdom to do it, because the power is there, but it's for us to call and ask for it. Or when there's a difficult thing you're going through and it kind of has you afraid, to call upon God to empower you with the gift of courage and help you stand there, not alone, but empowered by God, that same courage that the apostles had to go out and spread the good news. The Holy Spirit is the presence of God living and breathing inside of us, and confirmation gives us that fullness of the gift. But I think so often we all forget that power, and it's important for us to remember. So I hope you guys have a good week this week. And 8th grade, I'm looking forward to Thursday and celebrating that sacrament of confirmation with you. See ya. Ruach.